It'll say that somewhere.
Let's see. Oh, so the preview, the thumbnail says 7 p.m., but if you actually start the video, it changes to 6.
Okay, and the text I think says begins at 6 p.m. Right? Very top.
I think
like above the video, like the text part of the post.
Yeah, it just says Capital Improvement Planning Committee, April 5th, 2021. And is that me that second? Oh, maybe not.
Hi, John.
Hello, how are you?
Are you the only one on?
I'm on.
Guess so. Oh, no.
You're not alone, Mr. Vina.
Hey,
Chris
Bob.
is here.
Was that
Hey,
Chris?
Chris.
Hey, Chris.
How you feeling? Better.
So we have Bob Servitt, John Viner, Chris Woodbury, and Tony.
This conference will now be
Texted
recorded.
me a few moments ago saying he's just running a little bit late. He's at a work meeting. So I think if the committee wants to begin, Tony will be joining us, in a little bit.
I'm going to call the meeting to order at 6:02. Announcement. This meeting is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, pursuant to the current state of emergency, due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have suspended public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. We're currently meeting remotely, and as such, all votes will be taken on a roll call in accordance with Regulation 940 CMR 29.10 of the open meeting law. Review and act on the meeting minutes of March 18th, 2021. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion to accept.
I have a motion by Bob. Do I have a second?
I will second that.
Second by John. All those in favor by roll call. John?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Review composite rankings for the CIPC. Take over, Tom, on that.
Yeah, so if the committee members look at the draft, I drafted a 2021 report and recommendations for to start the discussion tonight that the committee will have. So if you look at that document, that was in the email I sent to you all on Tuesday of last week. You can see the second page shows the composite rankings. It shows you've seen this you've all seen this before. This is the document where it shows each of the individual members' rankings per item, and then they're aggregated so that the column to the far right sorts them. I should say that they're sorted by highest score to lowest scores. So for instance, you can see that the number one ranked capital item is the sewer treatment plant upgrade, and that received a score of 248. And then as you make your way down that column, you can see the numbers in descending order. So that's the what we've been calling the composite ranking.
Okay, Tom. I noticed there's a few zeros. Is that just because they were missing?
I think that where you see zeros were, that was the number given to that particular project.
Okay. All right. I know last year when we had zeros, it was just missing. So I just wanted to be sure.
Yeah, we chased down a couple of you for missing rankings, but we have them all. So the zeros there are actual scores that were given.
All right. Thank you.
Through the chair.
All right. Go ahead, John.
I guess is a review of the free cash analysis sheet worthwhile. I guess just to understand or give the administrator an opportunity to explain how he may have arrived at his proposed sheet here.
I'm happy to provide that overview, Mr. Chairman. So if you look in the same email I sent to the committee, the last attachment is an Excel document titled Fiscal 21 FC, or Free Cash Analysis. So if you open that up, you can see at the top, this is the starting balance, $924,845, represents the balance at the conclusion of the special town meeting last November. So just making your way down the column here, first item is the fiscal 21 end of year deficits. That includes the snow and ice deficits, 4 or 5 other departments where there are some relatively small deficits that need to be made whole at the town meeting in May. The next item is a sick leave buyback appropriation to fund payouts for anticipated retirements in fiscal 22. The next is the assessor's revaluation. This has been pulled out of the capital committee's overview because it's obviously not a capital appropriation. So this will appear every year as a standalone warrant article. So the appropriation is $20,000 for the revaluation and certification. Okay, and the next 3 lines here are just for transparency's sake. So the plan, well, it's all for transparency's sake, but the plan is not to use any free cash to balance the fiscal 22 budget. So you see a 0 there. There are no planned appropriations into the OPEB account or the stabilization account. So then you have just the total. So the next line there, non-capital free cash appropriations, that's the sum of the figures above. So $183,500. Now the next item, the International 7300 dump truck was a capital purchase that was approved by the capital committee, I believe it was 2 years ago. And the funding for this was identified.
This conference will now be recorded.
So, and the total yearly cost for each of the lease payments is $63,218. So what I've been able to do is, and I've done this every year, before leading up to either an annual or special town meeting, go back and look to see if there are any unexpended capital balances where, either the equipment or the vehicle has been purchased or the project is completed and there's some residual funds left over. So I was able to cobble up about $30,000 worth of unexpended capital, prior year capital balances toward this purchase. So the rest I had to make up with free cash. So you'll see this on the warrant. This is its own standalone article. So if you add 32,557 to 183,500, that's the total of everything that we need to use free cash for before we look at the spring capital program, and that basically leaves $708,788 available funds available, free cash funds available for the spring capital program. And then you can just basically go down the list and see how I've arranged the requests, and I'm showing the rank for each of these projects as well. A couple notes here. I have the library HVAC improvements fully funded. So as you'll remember, there's $110,000 on account. And the original cost estimate, which the engineer feels is going to hold for the bid, is $316,000. So I've taken 110,000. So we have 110. My recommendation is to put 215,000 toward this project. That gives us that would give us 325,000, which is over than the estimate to get this project done in one phase, which you heard from the engineer is really the most efficient, cost-effective way to do this. There's also an $8,000 balance from a preliminary study that was done 3 or 4 years ago, and those funds could also be used toward this purpose if there are change orders that push beyond the contingency. Now, I'll also remind you the cost estimate from 2019 included a 10% contingency. So that's some background on that item. The other background I have, if you skip down to line 22 in the spreadsheet, you see the Otis e-permitting acquisition costs. I have $10,000 there. So we opened up the price proposals last week, and after the committee had reviewed and ranked all of the proposals, the top proposal, the costs were not in the universe of affordable for this town, and I'm talking like hundreds of thousands of dollars, which was pretty disappointing. And partly, I think, partly I hadn't anticipated that, so I was thinking it's not something software costs are not something that I track closely, so I was clearly not even, I wasn't anticipating that, let's just say. So I asked Todd Miller to discuss with the top ranked vendor some pricing strategies that could potentially be doable, in the fall, because there isn't enough money right now available in free cash to throw toward acquisition costs at this time. So my suggestion is, because this project is something that the Board of Selectmen really got behind pretty firmly, my suggestion is just to leave the $10,000 in there as a start. Have Todd continue his discussions with this vendor, see if they can't work out some sort of alternate pricing strategy that could be potentially funded in November. So it's some discouraging news there, but that's where we are. Everything else, and then the other, I'll note the two entries below that: Highway Department hook and go truck. Excuse me. the total cost of that was $141,000 plus or minus. And I was able to apply to a USDA rural grant program that will reimburse the town 35% of that. So the recommended funding here is 65% of the total cost. 65% would be $91,943. Excuse me. So that's pretty much, that's pretty much a quick overview. The committee could certainly deliberate and make suggestions or alternate recommendations. And you can see I have the salt storage building funded with another round, 123,630. That brings the total appropriation. If you could just give me 1 second here. Okay, that brings, if this is the number that goes forward to town meeting and gets funded, that would bring the total amount on account up to $572,281, which is roughly half of the $1.1 million cost estimate. So that gives you a sense of where we are there.
Tom, on the e-permitting that the selectmen have been pushing, if it's a couple $100,000, like you said, for the software, is it going to save us a couple $100,000 for the department? Is it going to pay for itself? Because it seems pretty silly to put this out there, and if we can't save money or make more money off of it, then it's a waste in my eyes.
Yeah, understood, Chris. I think the value that's seen here and that a lot of other communities see here is not so much in cost recovery, but in terms of ease of use, not only for the town staff, but for the public and contractors, homeowners. We have a paper system here, which is it works, but it's not very efficient, and so so I think the value here is to modernize, streamline, try to gain some efficiencies that will also free up town staff to realign hours dedicated by town staff on a day-to-day basis. So but I see your point. I don't see where this e-permitting system would save the town any future costs.
Right. So, maybe have Todd reach out to local communities that might have a e-permitting system, so they can see what to use and what's involved, how much it was for them.
Right. That's a great idea. I've asked Todd to do just that, Mr. Chairman. I know Worcester has Viewpoint, which is a pretty sophisticated software platform. And I know that Charlton was just a little bit ahead of us in this RFP process. I was able to use their template for our purposes. So I think those phone calls will be valuable, and to see what other communities are paying, because it has to, obviously it has to make sense. It has to make sense from a budgetary perspective. Yeah, certainly.
All right. Going over the spring capital program that you recommended, I have a couple of reservations about a few of them, only because we don't have quotes in hand. The fire department bathroom renovation at 50,000. Are they going to be doing that themselves, or are they going to reach out to a contractor to come in and do that? Because if that's the case, then unfortunately, it's going to be a lot of money for them to do that bathroom over that 50,000.
So because the estimate's at $50,000, that will require that the town use sealed bids. So it will only, the only way that can get done is through the sealed bid process.
Okay, so they didn't plan on doing it themselves then.
That's right. They have to, because if what they're if the $50,000 estimate is true, then they have to go the sealed bid route and hire a contractor to do this work. Now, one way this might be able to be handled is, appropriate the $50,000 now, and then time the issuance of the bid close to the November special town meeting, so that when so that you get bids in hand, let's say 2 weeks before town meeting, and then you'll know if you need a supplemental appropriation, and then so that's one way you can handle that. That's how I handled the senior center project.
Right.
Tom, do they have an idea on that $50,000? If that's a hard number, or that's just a ballpark number, or maybe you don't know? I'm not sure.
I think if I remember correctly, the chief said he did reach out to an architect. I just can't remember the name, and I don't know if he mentioned the name. So I know that it's a pretty decent estimate. So
if that is the case, then maybe doing it like you're saying and take it to town meeting for the additional might be the way to go.
Yeah,
because I'd like to see them get it. I think it's a lawsuit waiting to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, that would make sense. And you'll have the hard number. You'll have the low bid in hand, right before the town meeting, and and let's say it comes in at 65,000. I don't know. Then you go to town meeting to get the balance needed.
I don't know. I personally think that's the way to go. I don't know what John and Chris think, but that doesn't sound like a bad idea.
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine with that. I just want to make sure that all our bases are covered on that.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes. State your name.
Mr. Chairman, Selectman Gary Woodbury. I have a couple of questions for you. Number one, $50,000, it will kick us into prevailing wages. Nowhere did he ever say that did we take into anticipation of the prevailing wages. That would require us to put it out to a sealed bid, which will require us to pay prevailing wage. That's one problem I have, because you don't have a solid number. Some of the other stuff that's on here, and I want to go back to the salt storage shed, is we're still hitting on that 1.1 million. That estimate is about 3 to 4, maybe even 5 years old. So your salt storage shed today, as near as I can tell, is going to come in about 1.5, about 1,560,000. So to throw another 123, in my lifetime, we probably won't see that built. I think you need to relook at that. The other thing that's on there is the wood chipper. Get an estimate of 42,000. As I did my research today, that is an old quote. You're well over 50,000 today. So I guess my concern is we're working with numbers that are bogus numbers. They're not accurate, they haven't been updated. And I think we're only fooling ourselves when we pick that. As you pick through your priorities, you don't have solid numbers. That's a big concern for me. So I just want to state that tonight. Thank you. And one last thing, if I could, I spent $200,000 on the for the e-permitting program. I'm beside myself that I just found out tonight that instead of being what we thought would be 10,000, 20,000, it's somewhere around 200 plus maybe. And I just found that out tonight. To me, that's a disappointment that the select board is finding out now that that is a problem. So I just want to state that also. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I just remind the committee that we just opened these price proposals at the end of last week. So I haven't been sitting on this information. It's something I was preparing to bring to the April 12th Selectmen's meeting.
And I appreciate that, Mr. Administrator. But if you knew last week, I think that was something that the board should have known. Just my opinion, where I'm coming from. Thank you.
All right. So I also have the superintendent's vehicle cost of $30,000. That number that he gave us for the F-250, was it? Is that the correct number?
Yeah, if you recall, Mr. Chairman, this was the funding arrangement for this item was identified $30,000 from free cash, and I believe $18,400 from water retained earnings. The total purchase price being $48,400. So you can see this is the free cash component of the acquisition.
So
All
there's
right.
an $18,000 difference there in what we're looking at and what it's actually going to cost, Tom.
So yeah, so it was the funding is coming from two sources. So the total cost to buy the F-250 is $48,400, $30,000 from free cash, and $18,400 from water retained earnings. So I talked to Bill Cundiff about this. There's $0 right now in water retained earnings. So for this to go forward, town meeting in May can appropriate $30,000 from free cash, and then when the fiscal 21 year ends, whatever is available from the water retained earnings can be appropriated to fund the difference. You know, and then you have the ability to buy the vehicle in November after the special town meeting.
All right, I guess
so
sorry, Chris, go ahead.
We'd have to wait a cycle on this anyways.
I'm sorry. What do you mean? What do you mean, Mr. Chairman?
So he wouldn't move forward to buying this truck until November anyways.
Right.
So I mean to put this money on hold in an account for it. Just my thought. I would like maybe, and it's just my thought, and it's up to the board. It's up to ultimately the select board when they go through these to choose what they're ranking and what they want to put through. I would appropriate that $30,000 at the next capital go round and maybe put this into OPEB, because they always like to put a little bit of something in the OPEB for the year, and go from there, and then revisit it in November if it's not going to get done over the summer. just so we have something in the account, that's all.
Through the chair, I guess refresh and either the chair or the administrator, whoever better can answer this. I guess refresh my memory as to what do we have for free cash normally at fall town meetings, and how is that number arrived at? I guess my concern being, how are we going to have that 30,000 to appropriate?
I can answer that question, Mr. Chairman. So the free cash number gets certified every year in September for the fiscal year just concluded as of the prior June 30th. So the full certified number will be available in the fall. So last fall it was 1.3 million. I can give you exact numbers if you hang tight for a minute.
Through the chair, I got a question. Tom, how many of these numbers are actually solid numbers? Because apparently, at least from what I'm seeing so far, that doesn't seem to be the case. I thought that these were going to be solid numbers that we're going to have, on the cherry sheet. And I'm kind of trying to figure out, like you're talking about the superintendent's vehicle, we're not going to have the money for it this cycle. But same thing with the bathroom renovation.
Yeah, let me just.
That's kind of concerning. I mean, this is my first go round, so bear with me here. I'm trying to understand this process.
Yeah. Let me just answer. Yeah, I'm happy to answer that question. Let me just answer through you, Mr. Chairman, Jonathan's question. So, fiscal 20 free cash was certified at 1.378 million, and all of that was available at the fall special town meeting. The year before in the fall, fiscal 19 free cash was certified at 1.329. Again, all of that's available in the fall. The year before that, fiscal 18, the free cash number was 1.198 million. Again, all of those dollars are available for appropriation in November at the special town meeting. To the question about the numbers, I mean, I ask. This is the cycle. This is how this process unfolds every year. I ask my department heads to give me their best analysis, and these are the numbers that they give me. So, you did hear the fire chief talk about reaching out to an architect. I give the department heads the discretion to work up their best estimates, and that's what they bring forward to me. So. These are the best estimates provided to me by the department heads. The brush chipper, I don't recall there was a concern raised at the last meeting, but I guess there is now. So I don't have an answer other than to tell you that these are the numbers given to me by the departments that represent their best estimates. So,
Mr. Chairman,
I appreciate that, Tom.
Yep.
Mr. Chairman, this is not on the administrators. Just so I'm clear on this. Unfortunately, we had a department head who was leaving who just continued with the same numbers. And I'll take some of the brunt of it because I should have looked at this closely. I just happened to look at where the recommendations are, and I can tell you we are going to fall short. And to me, we're going to be in the same boat where we're sitting with $400 and some odd thousand in a salt storage shed, and with the addition 550 or whatever Tom said. But we are still so far away that, and it's not his fault. He only gets what's turned into him. But I guess my problem is we're working with numbers, or your committee's working with numbers, the administrator's working with numbers that are bogus. That's a big problem for me. And you guys know, I always say the same thing. Give me the damn numbers, because they won't lie. So when I look at it, and just being me, I went online today and I punched in a Bandit wood chipper, and it comes up $50,000. So I say, okay, we're 8,000 short, so we're going to sit with that money in there, and then hope like heck that come the fall we can filter some money into that. So the next round of free cash for capital improvements, we got to still be taking to backload what we're approving today. It's not a way to run a business. It's not a way, and again, it's not on Tom on this. These are bogus numbers that were submitted that are going to put us in the same position where we're a year down the road. And Tom was pretty straight on that. If you look at the library on how long that the HABC system has been going, and any of these other projects, that we're not fulfilling the obligation of, if we say, okay, we're going to fund this, and then we're short, and it really isn't funded. I guess that's my problem. And it doesn't hang on him on this one. This is definitely the numbers that were submitted are wrong. And I guess I'll take some of the brunt of it because I should have looked at them closely. But as I go down and I look at the recommendations made to us, or that was brought forward, I think at the Finance Committee meeting, I sat picking through them. And as you guys know, I'm hung up on my building maintenance position, and that even when I scrimp and scrape, I'm not going to get. And to me, that is the most cost-saving plan that we ever came up with. So I can't blame Tom on this. He can only deal with the numbers, and you guys could only. But I'm telling you today, the numbers are wrong. That's all I can tell you. You know, the e-permitting, had we known that it was going to be 200,000, and again, I'm just using my background in methods engineering and time study that I look at this, and I have to look at the overall picture, and I'm saying, what's the value of the cost versus the value of saving, and what are we getting for our money? So again, I just want to be clear. It's not. This doesn't hang on Tom. He can only go by what's given to him. But again, that bathroom at 50,000 prevailing wage, and as I calculated, I'm not sure that there was an engineer involved in that. I think it was a summary of, we've been fortunate because that's the one thing the fire chief does well is he was able to do the insulation in the windows because he piecemealed it and a little bit at a time. So we were away from prevailing wage. It wasn't a big project at once. Where this is going to be virtually a tear out and a renovation that can't be done piecemeal. So I guess those are my concerns, and I would be doing my job if I didn't air them out. So thank you.
And through the chair, this wasn't any indictment on Tom, and I think you know that, Gary. I'm trying, like I said, this is my first year on the committee. I'm trying to understand this, but it seems like the department heads are letting down the town manager by not giving him realistic numbers, and they can't expect us to work with unrealistic numbers. And I agree 100% on the salt shed. By the time we got the money to pay for this, it's already going to be out of our reach again. This is like pissing in the ocean. Nothing's ever going to really happen here. You're not going to make any major differences. I think it's one of those situations where they're either going to have to go for possibly a debt exclusion or something to get this thing done. It's kind of like the same situation where in 2008, the roads were going to cost us, $8 million to do every single road in this town. And here we are, 2017, and it cost us, $17 million to do half the town. So if that's not a story right there to tell you that this doesn't work, to throw in a little bit at a time. It's the same thing as with the O'Gara Park. Let's put $25,000 away, and in 10 years we'll have $250,000, and then it's going to cost $500,000 to do the grandstand. It doesn't make any sense. And Tom, if that's how it came across to you, then I apologize because I wasn't being clear. But I feel that the department heads need to have their act together on this. This is like.
Yeah, no, I understand. I understand. The frustration you all are articulating is something I understand. We can pause on the e-permitting and not fund that right now, and I can zero that out. The committee could recommend putting $123,630 into stabilization, and say,
you're reading my mind, Tom. I would like you the superintendent's vehicle, the $30,000. I'd like to take 10 grand and put it on the brush chipper. And put 52 away just in case. So I would also like to take maybe an additional 20,000, put it on the fire department bathroom renovation out of that money. That way, if it comes back at 65 with prevailing wage or 70, the money's there where we can go ahead and we don't have to wait.
Okay, let me make a note of that so I can follow you. See, you're suggesting reduce the 30,000 number by 20,000, put 10 into the brush chipper, making that 52, and then putting another 10 into the bathroom reno. Is that what you said?
I would put 20 into the fire department bathroom renovation and just wipe out the superintendent's vehicle altogether.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
I can certainly do that.
John?
So I guess question, if we say overfund one of these, the specific account for one of these specific capital items, right now, say we put in, say we put in the 52,000 into the brush chipper and it only comes out as 50,000. Is that balance available to be reappropriated for the November town meeting?
That's correct.
In September, it will be turned back in.
Okay,
so just be careful. It can only, the only way to access those dollars is via a town meeting action. So the $2,000 sitting on account, your example, John, would sit there until town meeting moved that money to some other purpose.
Okay, but it would be, I guess that would be eligible to happen at the fall town meeting, provided that we procured these items, in the interim.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So, I mean, I guess what I'm trying to establish there is if we're going to err on the side of caution with funding any of these items, and if there's an immediate need and we don't want to waste 6 months, then we can overfund them to a certain degree of whatever we feel comfortable, and then we'd get that balance back to reappropriate in the fall.
Right.
Just I guess expressing that thought.
That's correct.
And so through the chair, I guess continuing on with the overall ranking, my thought is, do we want to go through and make a determination as to the items and their amounts that we can definitively agree on and with relative ease, so we kind of have a starting point, and then we can kind of get into the weeds after that?
Yeah, I mean, we'll take them one by one. The spring capital program rank, the recommendations from the minister they put forward, we can take one by one. So first one, police. That's something we do every year.
No reservations.
I have none either. Fire department, I have no reservations about the bathroom. That is something that needs to be done, because we do not have a women's bathroom there currently, and we do have women firefighters currently on the department. So I think that would be probably a federal lawsuit coming down the pipe if
it's a project we need to do. We can just we can get back to tweaking the number after.
Right. The library HVAC, this has been going on 2 years. Per our last meeting with the vendor and the engineer, he answered all my questions, all your questions. Very comfortable that we have the correct people doing this job.
I agree. I feel I feel it's appropriate to fund the library and, in whole. I mean, at this point, it's an all or nothing kind of thing. I don't think we're really in a position to make an argument for any kind of partial funding.
Yeah.
And I think it's, with what we're looking at, I think it's appropriate to fund the total request.
The salt storage. Oh, go ahead.
I agree. It's
Okay.
one of those things that we're gonna have to pay for it sooner or later, and we might as well just get it off the books. And I was very comfortable with it here.
All right. The highway department salt storage building. We know eventually we're going to have to do it. But the problem is, first, was elected to the select board in 2014. This number was right around 600,000, between 4 and 6. And it's doubled since then in 7 years. So it's something that's just, now it's 1.5 possibly. So that's something that I would like to put this off and skip over it for now, if that's okay with the board.
I have no issue.
Yeah, and I mean, my take on this currently, I think that in so many words, we kind of need to go back to the drawing board. We may, because the figure we're looking at, 1.2, 1.5 million is going to be difficult to obtain with any scenario. One of the thoughts I bounced around is, that figure, the proposed shed that they're coming up with is to, I believe he said to accommodate 5,000, no, half. So I think 2,500 ton of salt. It may be worthwhile to evaluate getting 2 barns with each, having 12 or 1,300 ton in each, and having 2 barns gives you some flexibility from an operational manner, and if we can afford 1 barn out of the 2 for the interim, that gets us somewhere, and that's not just money sitting and waiting in an account either. But I get to directly address your comment, Mr. Chairman. I don't think we can fund this at the moment.
Is there a suggestion, Mr. Chairman, to perhaps, or is the committee interested in considering perhaps putting these dollars into stabilization?
Yeah. I'm fine with putting them in the stabilization or splitting it between that and OPEB.
Let's get to I don't know, personally, I think let's get to the bottom of the list and see what we got and then look at it.
For now, just mark that off.
Yeah.
All right, the police, the MDT replacements. That is something that they do need. I'm fine with them. That's something that lasted 6 years. The chief's been very good at replacing these a little at a time. I don't think this is an unreasonable thing to fund.
I agree.
All right. Parks and Rec, Powder Mill lighting upgrade. This is Powder Mill is the most used park we do have currently in town. The lighting will make it safer for everybody who travels there. Also will make at night, the police be able to see inside there, hopefully to cut down on any type of vandalism or loitering at the park after hours. I'm okay with that. I think $5,000 for lighting upgrade is cheap, because if you remember when we went to O'Gara for their lighting, it's astronomical to upgrade. So I'm fine with this.
I'm good with it.
I'm good with that, Chris.
Okay, highway department brush chipper. Me personally, I'm just seeing how I feel about it. I think this is something that we do need. Currently listening to Eben on it. There is no safety features on the current brush chipper. I think it leaves the town open to maybe possible future lawsuits or injury of someone. And we definitely don't want the government stepping in, OSHA, because it's not a safe brush chipper. On this, I'm okay with it, providing we actually put enough money into it to fund it properly.
I agree. We don't need the lawsuit.
I agree.
Okay. The superintendent's vehicle. I am happy that they turned it into a truck. I think it makes more sense for them. However, since water has no retained earnings to fund this go around, I think it's in the best interest of the town and the taxpayers to put this off until the fall meeting, and then take it up then again.
I agree.
I agree. I guess I'm going to have, or my question with that is, there was a capital request submitted on behalf of the water department for this item. So I guess that was done without them being aware that they don't have the retained earnings to fund it. Am I understanding that correctly?
Well, the request was included and appeared both in the UNF listing, the capital request listing, and in the water retained earnings listing. I had forwarded, Bill kind of knew about this, so it's not that he didn't know. I explained to him that the water retained earnings balance was at 0 right now. So the full funding for this item couldn't be accomplished in the spring. He was aware of that.
Okay. So then, next stupid question: is there any, robbing Peter to pay Paul kind of scenario, where the town free cash could fund the entirety of the truck so it can be purchased, and then, for the lack of a better way of putting it, we're paid back by water retained earnings when they become available? And
I have to give that interesting idea. I have to give that some thought, because there has to be an appropriation. So just procedurally, I'm not sure off the top of my head if what you're describing could take place, because there'd have to be an appropriation out of the water retained earnings made at town meeting. Yeah, I'd have to give that some more thought. I don't know, because let's say for example, the committee agrees to reduce the salt storage building by the amount needed to buy the full F-250, 18, reduce that by 18.4, and increase the free cash appropriation to 48.4 for the superintendent's vehicle. Well, then we go ahead and buy the vehicle, and that would zero out that balance, and then there'd have to be appropriation out of water retained earnings for 18-4, just to put it back in.
To the town general fund, I guess.
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, we can give it a try.
I mean, I raised the issue only for the fact that there is an absolute, almost dire need for the superintendent's vehicle. It's in very poor repair. I mean, I don't really want to, I guess, get into any kind of precedent or habit of doing this, and I'm not even, I guess, 100% comfortable, if you will, in the procedure that this could take place under. But I guess we're between a rock and a hard place, so to speak, and that's the only reason I bring up the issue.
So I suppose that could work. I mean, just thinking that through, we have to find money to fully fund it now somehow, and then go to the fall. I'll make a note to Bill Cundiff that in the fall the water department will sponsor a warrant article transferring $18,400 from water retained earnings into this free cash, this capital account, which will just put those dollars in there, and those dollars will just sit there because we will have paid for the vehicle by then. But then they're available for a future transfer for some other purpose. So I suppose that could work. I'm just thinking it through.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I could ask the administrator a question.
Go ahead, Selectman Woodbury.
On the 18-4, because theoretically we'd be using, we're talking about 18-4. I'm not sure we can use it on it. It'd be a zero balance on it'd be virtually an unfunded mandate at that point. I like the idea of trying to jockey it around. The number on that truck, because I know, Mr. Chairman, you had found that the original quote was with a diesel motor. Are these numbers adjusted out for that?
I believe it was not for this one. I think it was for the hook and go.
Oh no, it wasn't. It was for the 1 ton, right? The 1 ton dump. I apologize. I think that's
in their budget. Yeah.
I'll backtrack on that. But I would say this is the purpose. I think to use a percentage of that truck on the superintendent's vehicle was to spread the cost. And Jonathan's right. Actually, the superintendent's old vehicle is no longer ours. We sold it in auction, so that will be leaving. So I do think it becomes a priority. Again, if you're adjusting money, and Tom knows better than I do, the 18-4, I think it'd be like taking a loan, and I'm not sure we want to really do that. Is what happens come fall if the retained earnings with any waterworks and any road work that we've done that they have to do something, we could virtually have zero there anyways, depending on what that money's used for. So I just want to be cautious on that. So thank you.
Through the chair, and that's I agree. It's I mean, I guess and it's, again, like I said, I don't know if we want to get into setting precedent and how far you could take it. Well, is the water department going to want to borrow $2 million from the town next time to do a water main kind of thing? But it's I guess, well, I'm going to fall back onto, what mechanism or what, I guess, what sets in place the requirement we have where X amount of percentage of this vehicle is funded from highway and X amount from the water department.
Well, so because the superintendent, as you all know, because the superintendent oversees both highway and the water department, the original split was something that Bill Krakowski arrived at in his earlier proposal for the Tahoe, I think it was, So the same percentages were used, so, which I thought at the time were pretty fair. So, we're basically saying that, we're saying that so $30,000 represents 62% of 48,400. So we're saying that, essentially almost 2/3 of the highway superintendent's work is dedicated toward all activities funded through the general fund. Highway, transfer station, utilities and facilities, and then approximately 1/3 is directed toward overseeing the water activities. So the percentage split seemed reasonable to me, so we could have the debate about, is that not the right split? But it's probably not far off from there if it's something different, I think.
Right, and I guess that's not my argument per se, is, where or what is there a requirement? Is there some kind of bylaw? Is there a water department regulation? Is this some kind of standing policy? I guess just how did we arrive at that percentage of split cost, and is that something that can be changed?
Yeah, it certainly can be changed. What it does is it mirrors how the water department funds their capital. So just like on the general fund side, where free cash funds a new police cruiser, a new bathroom renovation, so also on the water and sewer side, do those retained earnings fund the capital projects and acquisitions, vehicle acquisitions for those departments? So it's just extending it. So this request is for a vehicle that serves both the general fund and the water department. So it would make sense that the water department has some share in this, right? And so that would be
understood.
Yeah,
understood. I guess the more direct question is there any specific legal mechanism that prohibits us from solely funding this vehicle through free cash from the town?
Oh, I'm sorry if I didn't understand that. So no, there's no prohibition that the town could fund the acquisition of the vehicle with $48,400 entirely out of free cash. That there's no prohibition, legal or otherwise, that would preclude that from happening.
Okay, thank you. I guess that's what I was just looking to establish. So it's,
okay, I understand now.
At this point, then it's a debate of whether or not it's if it's financially prudent or appropriate to go that route or not. And I guess, to be fair, I haven't thought that far ahead, but I just wanted to, I guess, talk through the process and let that option be understood if we had it.
Mm-hmm.
So, Mr. Chairman, I think the whole theory behind that was to be creative in the financing, in the fact that it was a vehicle out of the realm of what barring what the fire chief drives or what we use for cruises, or you heard him talk about expeditions, got handed down to the police department, and we're getting away from that stuff. And it was creative so that the former superintendent could actually get a Tahoe versus a pickup truck that's always been used. And I think that's how this all became creative financing, which does make sense because theoretically is the superintendent's pay is a portion out of the highway, out of water, and out of the transfer station, because those are the three areas that he is directly responsible for. And I'm just looking at this, looks to me like it was just a creative way to be able to come up with the number for the Tahoe at that point in time. So I think, again, is the theory is that this could be handed down to the water department as the superintendent's vehicle became an age process. If one vehicle get handed down, whether it be that pickup or maybe for that matter, it could be the highway foreman's pickup. And at that point, there is some value. So you could virtually transfer that vehicle within departments. We've done it before. So I think we're getting hung up on the numbers and where the percentages are coming from. But I think it was more a way to be creative for the type of vehicle that the last superintendent thought was, I guess, what he needed or what would be more useful. In going through the process, and we've now learned that the pickup truck is just as useful. So I think that's how it came up, and I'm not positive. I hate to speak for somebody who isn't here, but as I look at it, that's what it more looks like to me. So.
So, Mr. Chairman, we can, I agree that, or I guess if we have to wait, if you will, on additional funds from a different source, then it would be appropriate at this time to allocate zero to that, to the superintendent's vehicle, and then we can allocate the appropriate amount at the fall town meeting.
If we sold this vehicle, what is he currently driving? Do we know, Tom?
I'm sorry, ask the question again, Mr. I didn't hear you, Chris.
As Selectman Woodbury stated that we sold his vehicle that he was driving, what is he currently driving?
I think he's driving the vehicle. I think he's driving the superintendent's vehicle that we've had for some time. I
can answer that.
Okay.
The vehicle, the former two superintendents used, became unsafe. It's rotted out. That's why we went with a new vehicle. Our superintendent right now, just like not the last one, but the one before, is driving his personal vehicle. And I don't think that, as we did with Mr. Tyler, to clock up miles on their own vehicle, to have to go to meetings in it, or actually go out and look at projects and take his own vehicle down some of these roads is unfair. I do think that you could fund this out of free cash, judging if you don't do the salt storage shed influx, just round numbers based on if the fire department needed more, which I think they're going to, in the difference of the 18,000 on that truck, the 20,000 roughly that I think you're talking about for the bathrooms to be safe. And if it was 8,000 for the wood chipper, if that's how you guys rank these, it's roughly 48,000. That would still leave you 75,000 to put into stabilization or whatever you guys think is the best move. But again, I think that we don't have a truck for him, I guess is my answer right now, because that one wasn't safe.
Gary, did that fail inspection last year? Am I thinking correctly? Did that
you know, I think we got it through, but the front fender is completely rotted off. And just, I mean, we put it into auction, and auction usually turns a good profit. I think it was roughly a little over $1,000 we got at auction for it.
Okay.
But it definitely was not a safe vehicle.
Yeah.
And we couldn't put them in it. You know, there's more liability to put them in that truck than anything else. So right now there is no superintendent's vehicle. So again, I think that as we did with Mr. Tyler when he was here, he bought a brand new car. Chris, I think you were on the board then. And within the first year, he clocked well over 30,000 miles on it. So even though we pay mileage, if somebody has to use their own vehicle, the maintenance and the depreciation far outweighs what they're doing. So I just want everybody to be aware on that. But no, Tom, that was that pickup. I think you probably, I don't know if it got to you yet because they closed the bidding, I think, last Friday.
Okay.
But it didn't, you know. So that is, you know, again, that's where we're at. So I just want to be clear: is this gentleman is using his own vehicle again, and unfortunately, we don't have a vehicle, I guess, that put him in right now. So.
All right. So I would suggest that we find the way to fund this vehicle for him. And then the next one, maybe water can actually pay a little bit more if it ever comes around. Their retained earnings going forward on the next round, maybe to replace the vehicle in 5 years. They can keep that in the back of their mind. Is that okay with everybody else?
I agree,
Mr.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah,
At that
I
point,
can't
whatever
argue
the
with
value,
that. He needs to have his own vehicle.
and whatever the value of that vehicle was, if it got handed down, because the water department is using a Ford Ranger right now, there is some value to that, and that could be maybe a transfer at that point. Tom, I'm sure we could come up with something. I'm not sure what it is, but so just being creative.
So let me just make sure I'm following this. So the committee seems to be arriving at the consensus of fully funding the superintendent's vehicle out of free cash. I understand why. And then are you suggesting, is the committee suggesting perhaps to reduce the salt storage appropriation by $18,400?
Currently, yes.
Okay, all right. Let me just update my notes here so I'm with you all. Okay, that will reduce the salt storage appropriation to $105,230.
Okay. Moving on to the Otis e-permitting acquisition cost of $10,000. Since this is a couple $100,000, possibly, I think what we should do is not fund this go around until we have hard numbers. Let Todd work through, see what other towns are having, so we can actually have a good cost on this. What I would suggest is take this $10,000 and move it towards the brush chipper of the highway department.
Yeah, I agree. We shouldn't be, I guess, appropriating $10,000 just to throw out in space. And you know, wherever it bears out appropriate to move that funding to, you know, we can figure that out. I agree. Let's strike the 10,000 for Otis off right now, and we'll figure out the balance when we get to the bottom.
I agree, Chris.
All right. Fire department HVAC improvements. I'm fine with that. Based on the police station, it's a pretty good estimate of what they need. That's actually a pretty solid number. I've done my homework on that one too. So I'm okay with that.
I agree. That's a go.
I'm okay with it. The one thing I will note is that if I recall correctly, that quote was a little dated. It may be one of those items where it could be beneficial to overfund it by some small margin to ensure that it actually happens. I'm trying to look through my submittals right now.
I thought it was
Yeah,
18.
so the estimate was from Higgins Energy. It's dated July 19th, 2018. And okay, yeah, and so the estimate specifically reflects $18,328.12. Yeah, so I guess if we appropriate the 20,000, is that a sufficient margin?
Through the chair, I've just been kind of going back and forth with the chief on his capital items, and he thinks that 20,000 is solid.
Hi, Tony. Let's go with 20,000.
I mean, and on the earlier one, he said, yeah, it was hard to get. It's hard to get something in writing. He did some consultation from an architect, so he said, he agreed 70K was a good safe way to go. So yeah, he just told me that's solid. So it's up to us as to whether we want to put some padding in there or not. But he thinks it's solid.
Just going in the the windows he was pretty much perfect on. I mean, I know the chief does do his homework, but if we want to pad it, we can. That's up to the board, the committee here. We'll just take them, and we can always go back and adjust money if we have to. Highway Department hook and go truck. On this one, I have a few reservations on the usefulness of this truck if they need it within the department. If they're gonna get rid of what truck is this gonna replace versus add on. But I also don't want to throw the free money we're getting. So, I'm gonna err on the side of caution. I'm gonna go with the recommendation because we do have that free money to partially fund this. But
Mr. Chairman, if I recall correctly from these presentations and the discussion that was had, that grant is applicable to some of the other highway vehicles that are being proposed to be purchased. Is, I guess, looking at the administrator to confirm that.
This conference will now be recorded.
Funds to offset lease payments. So the grant can't be used to offset either of the two lease payments that we have budgeted in the highway department's operating budget. So it has to be an outright purchase. So that's
okay,
why
understood.
and so I just ran the quick numbers on this.
This conference will now be recorded.
$141,450. So 35% of that, the amount that we get through the grant, is $49,507. That's quite a bit of money.
a lot of money.
Goes without saying. So
Any more discussion?
Yeah, I guess for the lack of a better way of putting it, I'm gonna abstain on that discussion, if you will.
I'm going to play devil's advocate for a minute through the chair. When they did the presentation of the highway department, I was kind of surprised by all the dead vehicles they've got in there. And maybe that wasn't what they were trying to convey at the time, but that was definitely the impression I got, that they had more vehicles than they had bodies to put in them. And some of these vehicles, as we were looking at the numbers and looking at how old these vehicles were, there's a lot of vehicles that are pretty much getting close to extinction. I would probably be a little more comfortable if there was more of an effort to unload some of those vehicles at auction to try maybe offset some of the prices on some of the stuff that they would like. That's just my opinion, just, for what it's worth.
That's a good idea.
And I'll echo that, Mr. Chairman, and I will make a point of saying that this proposed hook and go truck, it is there is existing capability currently with the truck that they have, and my knowledge, that truck is operating fine. It's just it's old. I guess it may not meet the definition of ideal, but we're not in a dire situation, if you will, in terms of funding a hook and go truck. I guess I find this is a hard sell, I guess.
This was replacing the GMC. Is that what I'm remembering? There's a GMC or something that they're using.
I believe that's correct. GMC flatbed.
So my thing would be, if we go ahead with this hook and truck, maybe have that, since it's still in good running condition. Maybe we can get more money at the auction with it versus being dead, and it could offset some cost in the future on maybe another piece of equipment they might need. It's 35. This does 35%. So if they used it on, say, the superintendent's vehicle, it'd be less money. If they used it on the brush chipper, it'd be less money. It's eventually we're going to need to replace equipment. This one I'm on the fence on.
So,
myself.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Selectman Woodbury.
Just to be clear, I don't know the top. I didn't add all the numbers up because I haven't pulled it yet. But out of the auction, we put in a 6-wheel dump truck with a plow. We put in a chipper box that goes on the back of a 1-ton. We put in that pickup truck. Trying to think of what else was in there. Long story short, out of those pieces of equipment, it's roughly $14,000. Unfortunately, when we do that at auction, it doesn't go to the department. It actually goes into the general fund. Correct me if I'm wrong, Tom, but every time we have an auction, it ends up into the general fund because you can't. I don't think we are allowed to divert it back into that department. If I remember right, Tom, but correct. Okay, so yep. You got $14,000 going back into the general fund on that one. So when we talk about getting rid of vehicles, as we sell them at auction, that arbitrarily has to go back into the general fund. So it's not like we can take and it doesn't go into a free cash account. It actually drops into the general fund. So I just want to be clear on that. So it's not like we can sell it. When we talk about it's kind of what I was talking about the last time when we talked about a 10-wheel dump truck. 10-wheel dump truck will carry 20 yards. 6-wheeler is carrying 10. So I break it down to man hours. Is just for an example, when we're doing the parking lot next to the post office, we had our 6-wheelers running constantly for days at a time. where you tied it up. Every man was hauling, most everybody, and you could actually, just doing the quick math, you would have freed up a guy, at least one guy every day to be working on something else. So that's when I talk about the value of the vehicle. And again, we talked about a wing plow on that one. That vehicle, and I know we talked about the amount of miles on wing plow, but if you look at the utilization of what we have now, it is used as a winter vehicle. Come summertime, it sits. It's kind of like when you look at the street sweeper. It looks good, and the only time it has a problem is this time of year when we pull it out and then it starts breaking down. So when we look at stuff, we have to look at the value. If it frees up man hours, if it makes sense, and what's the value of that vehicle versus, and Bob hit the nail on the head, is you're right. That would free up, that would take one vehicle out of the fleet that we would put in auction and get a return, but that return would go into the general fund, just so everybody knows how that works. Thanks.
Yeah, and then I would just add, once those dollars are deposited into the general fund, they would eventually, in theory, close out to free cash for the following year. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Any other discussion on this one?
Through the chair, I have no issue with whatever's been said about this vehicle to this point. I worry about, you get the allure of the grant money is there. I'm worried that in a year and a half, whatever vehicle that this was, supposed to replace goes down in a year and a half from now. It's $200,000 or 175, and with no grant money. So that's only.
I understand. Bird in the hand is better than two in the bush. I get it.
And that's a valid concern. It's can't discredit that.
All right. I'm gonna on this one. I think
through the chair to help you. I'm going to vote to keep it in. My fear on that is strong enough for me to keep it in.
Yeah. That dollars is I'm on the fence, but being on the committee, being a former selectman, and seeing things that were cut, I'm apt to just vote that. I would hope that this would replace that GMC, that would go to auction, that this would replace it, and that's another vehicle that will come off that's been replaced and it's good, and we don't have to worry about it for 5 to 8 years. So I'm gonna go that I'm okay with it right now.
All right, I'll go with that, Chris.
And Mr. Chairman, I'm gonna stick with my indifference on this one.
I hear you. It's a tough call, John. The next one, the dry storage shed replacement at the highway department. I believe that's a good number on it. That is a metal building that they are going to put up themselves to replace the inefficient, rotted storage structure. I don't even know if you could call it a shed that they currently have. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I mean, the proper maintenance of the equipment pays dividends, and proper maintenance means having an appropriate place to store it. I absolutely think this needs to be funded. That's it.
I agree. I'm good with that.
All right, so we have a consensus on that one. And then the Parks and Rec, Lutheran Hill Playground equipment. I listened to the park presentation on this one. I understand. Try to bring that park back a little at a time. 10,000 is not a lot of money for this equipment. If you've listened to their presentations for Powder Mill Park and that equipment down there, that's a lot more expensive for that type of equipment. So I'm okay with this. I think it'll bring a little bit of joy to the community in the summertime during this pandemic that we're in.
I agree 100%, Chris. That is a well-used park, and I was there when they built that, when we put that in originally, and I think that's a good move.
Same here. Okay with it.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. So moving back, we have consensus on everything, even the ones that we're not going to fund. It's up to the committee how they want to proceed and move money around. My suggestion is on the Otis e-permitted acquisition cost of $10,000 to move that to the highway brush chipper to fund that at $52,000. That way we know we at least have enough in that account to get that brush chipper formed right after town meeting. Because if you go around the town, there's a ton of brush down. If you own your house and you look in your yard, there's branches down. So it's not just for the town, it's everybody. So, it's something that's going to save us man hours and be safe for our employees to use.
I agree. Mr. Chairman, so just so I'm on the same page, what's the cost of the superintendent's vehicle? Was it 49? Was it 48 and
48.
change?
48.4.
48.4.
48.4. Okay, so just as a point of discussion, I'm looking at Excel spreadsheet, and if we strike out Otis and we strike out the salt storage building in its entirety, and bear with me, if we strike those two items out and we change the superintendent's vehicle to 48,400, if we change the brush chipper to 52,000, that leaves us a balance of $85,230. So I guess it's, do we put that into salt storage as the balance, or one thing I will note is that in comparison to our actual ranking sheet, we did skip over the police building expansion, as well as I think the O'Garrett grandstand. And then I think everything else was below that on the list. So maybe the only thing worth discussion is the building expansion. Obviously, we can't fund that in its entirety. My thought would be, if it's worthwhile to provide some level of funding to that account to at least cover, architectural and design services to come up with a a turnkey product to be funded in the future, if you will. And
Through the
to
chair,
be,
can
you know,
Just
through the chair, to be fair, that's acknowledging that the bigger picture of just the fire station and the police station in general, and how we treat those buildings in the future.
all right. Just going back through your math, John, it should leave if we did 18. If we struck down Otis, that 10,000, moved that to the brush chipper and took the 18.4 out of the salt storage shed, should leave us with 105,230.
Mr. Chairman, does that
Yeah.
count to 20,000 for the bathroom?
No, it does not. And then 20,000 to the fire department bathroom, so it would leave 85,230.
That's what I
That's
have.
exactly right. That's what I have. So
Okay. Tom, if we do design services on the police station, are we going to have to come up with a ready to use project like everything else? Do we only have so much?
Well, what we could do is, I understand the suggestion to try to get design services fully funded. So design services is comprised of different phases. So you could potentially fully fund design services all the way through construction administration, but not, but it may not, in other words, how do I say it?
It may never come to fruition.
You're not going to be paying a designer for construction administration services if the construction dollars haven't been appropriated. But,
right.
And so, design services, in my experience, typically range, 9 to, on the low side to like 12, 13% of a project's construction budget. So this is just rough numbers. I think the chief gave a rough estimate of 250,000 for his phase one of that project. Let me just see if that number's 225. Sorry, 225. So 10% of that is 22,500. Could that get design services at least underway? Yeah, I think so. So.
This is just my thinking that it would be up to, I would think, the townspeople and the select board, not so much capital, of how they want to do it. If I was there, we have a money on account for a salt storage shed that we will never be able to fund fully. And we would need a debt exclusion or an override to fund that properly. I understand John had a great idea about the 2 barns, but if we move that money, we could fund the police department expansion fully and get that project done.
And through the chair as well as the O'Gara, if you wanted to get 2 projects running.
Right. We could just get rid of those projects altogether and knock big projects off. And we still have the salt storage shed not funded, still at step 1. And if I remember from the roads, 1.5 is minimal on the tax levy, going through And we are currently working on something similar on the FMPC of what to do. That's why we have a survey out there. So I'm just throwing that idea, and that would be between the town administrator. It's not the capital committee's purview, I would think, to do that.
Mr. Chairman.
Yep.
Mr. Chairman, Gary again. I would recommend not touching that money. There could be a use for that. It could be that we don't need, I'm not saying we don't need, but if in fact the amount of salt that we need to store, they want to be able to load, dump a full trailer load with inside a building. I'm looking at maybe it's not a wooden building, but if Barn Sand and Gravel has a salt storage shed on the hill, it's made out of concrete blocks. It has a canvas top over it. The same building is in Brookfield. Same building is out in Millbury. I don't know what the lifespan is. They say it could be up to 20 years. And it could be that amount of money that you have in there now could definitely allow us to build something like that. And it may not be ideally what everybody would like to see, but if we are in dire straits and it's becoming an issue, I think that we should. I think we should not touch that money yet and look at alternatives, because once it's gone, we'll be at square one and we'll have nothing other than what we have right now. So I would recommend you give that some thought. That's all. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I like the thought of thinking outside the box and being flexible. I'm gonna lean on my gut here and say that I think first, before we touch that money, it'd be appropriate to, I guess, have to further evaluate the options, as was just suggested. I mean, I think, I guess simply put, I wouldn't be opposed to doing that in the fall. I think that maybe we should take between now and then to better explore, better explore our options, and to meet somewhat of the need before we move that money and reappropriate it. And to be fair, yeah, I mean, that acknowledges that we have, that sum of money sitting in the bank doing nothing for us for 6 months. It's a tough call.
So we have that balance of 85,230. Where's the recommendation of the committee? Do we put that towards a salt storage shed and put that in there to increase it? Or should we move that to stabilization as the town administrator recommended earlier?
It was just a suggestion, Mr. Chairman. I want to have the committee, make the final decision here. So, I mean, that's one option.
Right. Either that or OPEB. I mean, I know it's, being a member of the Board of Selectmen, I know it's always, those unfunded liabilities are always hanging over us like an albatross. So I know every year they try to appropriate something. So, I mean, we can split it and put it in there, do a third in each, a third in the salt storage shed, a third in the OPEB or stabilization. Or we can look at the renovation of the garage for the police station. Which phase was that? I don't have my notes with me.
The chief had identified phase one cost at $225,000.
But that was the building, right? Because he needed the building where he did. Okay, all right. So it doesn't matter if he wants to renovate the garage. That would be phase 3. Okay.
Yeah, that's right. The phase one, I think, was identified redesigning the garage and building essentially building a floor in there. There's a cathedral sort of if I recall the discussion, the garage has a high ceiling that spans 2 floors conceivably. So I think the expansion there is to build out a floor there and eliminate the garage.
Right, but he needed the garage before he did that.
That's right. That's right. To be able to. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, it's how does the committee want to proceed with that? 85-230. Any suggestions?
Go ahead, John.
No, you can go first.
I guess I'm listening to this and I'm following this, and it's like, it seems like the salt shed, it's like we're putting money away for something that we know we're never going to be able to afford without putting significant money away for that. And that just never, we all know that's not going to be the case where we're going to be able to throw like $100,000 at this thing, you know? And it's kind of like I said, with O'Gara, you know, you could put a little bit of money on O'Gara each year, but each year that gets further and further away because the cost of doing business is so expensive in Massachusetts. I like Tom's idea, to be honest. I don't see a lot of options there, and we're always robbing Peter to pay Paul. It seems like, and this is a prime example. It's just a question of, you know, how bad do you rob Peter, you know, to save Paul.
So, Mr. Chairman, I guess before I get into I guess discussing the merits or lack of with OPEB and stabilization, etc., has the select board had an opportunity to weigh in, if you will, on this current analysis? I guess what I'm getting at is, as the select board, right? Ultimately, the select board would be, I think, most appropriate for, obviously, to determine the OPEB and the stabilization appropriation. And if they've already made a determination that they desire to not put anything into those, then it's, I guess, counterproductive, if you will, for us to make that suggestion at this point. I guess I'm just looking to establish how we've arrived at, you know, 0 for those appropriations currently, and if we're just spinning our wheels or not.
I suppose I could take a shot answering that. So the selectmen haven't so much weighed in on $0 appropriations for OPEB stabilization as they're sort of waiting for this whole process to unfold. And so when I say whole process, that's the whole budget build process hasn't been completed yet. And so part of that budget, you know, part of this process, big picture wise, includes how do we want to spend our free cash. So what I've done in this spreadsheet is shown where there's no appropriation into OPEB or stabilization, with the idea that it maximizes the free cash available for the capital program. That was my rationale behind crafting this spreadsheet. So, but if the committee, and you've heard from obviously Tony's a member of the Board of Selectmen, and you've heard from Mr. Woodbury. I think that what the committee recommends will be useful for the Board of Selectmen. So if the committee recommends to zero out the self-storage building for all the reasons that have been discussed, and to put, let's say, all or half of that into stabilization, well, then that will help the Board of Selectmen in their deliberation, I think. Next week.
Yeah, understood. I guess I'm just coming from the point of view that, the OPEB and stabilization appropriations are not exactly our wheelhouse, for lack of a better way of saying it. And I think, I'm gonna defer to you, Tony, at this point. Like, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts on the OPEB is whenever we have capacity to put money into it, we should put money into it. It's going to be an unfunded mandate that's going to burn us. At any time, we have a significant amount of retirements in town. It's money that we don't account for in our regular budget as much as we should. So it's a looming expense that could kill us. So where we have the capacity to do it, we'd like to put money into that account.
I think maybe we should just leave it as the salts, $85,230 in the salt storage building. Present that to the selectmen, and they can move it however they'd like. If they decide they want to move that money out, then it's up to them because they have the final say. At least we funded everything that we needed to fund on this list. And we got a good jump where most of these projects can be taken care of. And we don't have to worry about OPEB or stabilization. That can be left up to the select board on how they want to move that.
Mr. Chairman, I agree with you, with the exception of, I think, personally, I would feel, well, I guess I don't really agree with you then. So I guess my personal take is the balance of whatever we have, we leave unappropriated. That we don't recommend any additional funding to the salt storage shed at this time. And again, my point of view, I think it'd be appropriate to establish, say, $25,000 to a fund for initiating design elements for whatever the police building expansion project will be, and then that leaves the difference of about $60,000 unappropriated.
Yeah,
just as a thought.
I hear you, but if my thinking on that is, we just went through.
This conference will now be recorded.
Towards it, and we didn't want to just leave that there. Same thing with this 25,000 won't get the stuff done for the building, for the police at this time. I rather fund that when we're ready, when we're shovel ready, like we did with the library HVAC, and have some good money into that account where we can put 150 or 200,000 in to get them close to being able to do phase one. If say in the fall we can put 112,000 towards it, and then in the spring another 112, he can go with phase one, and we can also put in a little bit for that then. But if we're going to do that 25 grand, I think it would be better spent either putting it in, either leaving, like you said, unappropriated. But again, if we don't appropriate it, we can't use it, so it won't be cashed out until the fall. Correct, Tom? If we don't appropriate that money,
Well,
can't use it until the fall.
Mr. Chairman, I guess my mistake in using the term. My intent with using the word unappropriated at that, the way I did, was just that the capital committee did not have a specific recommendation for it, and that, that would allow for the select board to place it as they pleased, if you will.
I mean, I could certainly, and so what I'll do this anyway. After this meeting concludes, I'll redraft the report and send it to you all for your final viewing. I can certainly draft a sentence or two in the narrative that describes just what Jonathan mentioned. The capital committee had no specific recommendation relative to funding this project at this time, and we'll defer to the Board of Selectmen. Then you're making it clear, in the narrative that's how the committee came down on this particular request.
Okay. I'm fine with that.
Yeah, so I don't feel strongly enough about it to argue the merits of the 25,000 for the police expansion. So I guess specifically, where does that? Do we leave the 85 and change as unappropriated, or what are the thoughts with that, or the other members?
My feeling is we should just do what you say. Just leave it unappropriated, the whole amount, and let them, with a suggestion or a thought maybe in that line, Tom, that, possibly up to the select board if they want to use that for design phases for police self-storage shed or whatever they're liking, and let them determine it.
Yeah, I understand. Yep. Okay.
They can tomorrow say, they don't want the HVAC improvements to the fire department. Not that they're gonna, but I've been, last year there was some stuff they didn't fund, because of COVID and the pandemic and stuff like that. So I think, we just owe it to ourselves, owe it to department heads and the taxpayers that we do the best job we can with the information that we've been provided. We got new information tonight, so I think we've done our jobs and adjusted accordingly. Where we knew there was a potential shortfall on some of the.
Through the chair, out of this process, would it also be possible that, we'd ask the administrator anyway. I think the Board of Selectmen would, but would it be good for this committee to ask for an updated estimate on the salt shed? If we're that far off, then we're throwing peanuts at something that has to have a larger solution.
I can, through the chair, I can speak with Bill Cundiff and see if we can get a more current cost estimate. I think that makes sense. It's Bayside Engineering that performed the cost estimate from a year and a half ago or so. We can ask them to update their numbers.
And Mr. Chairman, at the same time, could we look at what the cost of the alternative would be that I mentioned? I have done, there's an outfit right out of Connecticut that can quote it. And we can do all the excavation work can be done on site by us. So I think that's a more solid alternative that's going to get us down the road 20 years. Unless, again, that's why I say at least if that stays on account, we have a chance to depending what happens, as you know, with the FMPC, with the survey out there, I think that is one of them that's on. So we may have a little more insight down the road, but again, I would not recommend touching what's there now, but I also don't think that at this point to put any more money into it is any value. Tony's perfectly right on that. So thank you.
Yeah, through the chair, I'd also ask the administrator through this committee's recommendation that Mr. Cundiff try to look at the solution again. I'm looking at buildings that are sold as salt sheds, and I can't believe that some of these structures are $1.5 million. So I would just like to have him reevaluate the solution in general, at looking at other structures along with Selectman Woodbury's recommendation. I think we're looking at a stale price, stale solution. It's got to be reevaluated. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Through the chair, I agree with Tony, and I've been saying that, you know, this salt shed just seems to be an anchor around our neck, and I know the guys need it. I know they know it. I know it needed to be able to perform the job that they do every winter, but it's like, it just seems like we're just throwing good money after bad, and we're never going to get to the point where we can actually afford to do this thing in one shot without some kind of a major expense on the town's part. Just my take on it.
Mr. Chairman, I agree. It needs fresh eyes.
That it does. I think it's excellent. We've gotten very good feedback from everybody. I guess, Tom, you have next steps.
Yeah, that's Mr. Chairman. That's very helpful. A good conversation. What I'll do is I'll revise the spreadsheet, and then I'll redraft the report that reflects the committee's discussions this evening, and I'll send it out to you. I'll probably try to get it done tomorrow and send it out tomorrow, and that pretty much wraps up the process. The Board of Selectmen is planning to vote to close the warrant and sign the warrant next Thursday, April 15th. The date was pushed out a little bit because the regional school district came back with lower numbers, and they're not going to have a chance to have the school committee won't be looking at them and voting on them until April 13th, which would have been the day after the board closed the warrant. So the board will still meet on April 12th, but there'll be a special meeting for Thursday, April 15th, so that the board can close and sign the warrant that night.
Okay. All right. Can we do a motion to act on the 2021 CIPC report recommendations with the changes as discussed and given to Tom? Would that be a valid motion so we don't have to meet again?
Sure.
So moved.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, I get a motion and a second. Roll call vote. All those in favor? Tony?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. So that should help you out, Tom. So if you can still forward that to us.
Will do. Yep.
And then on the 12th, I know typically in the past, this CIPC did present their findings to the Board of Selectmen, and all the members were there in case they did have any questions. Do you want to do that April 12th?
Yeah. Would you like me to speak to the chairman to see if we can add an agenda item at the beginning so that the committee can give its rundown? That sounds fine to me.
Yeah, I know there were some members that did have that question. I possibly might not be able to attend, so the vice chair might have to fill in for me because I do have to work Monday.
Okay,
But yeah, if you could, that'd be wonderful.
sure.
Through the chair, I feel if it's an effective opportunity to I guess have a discussion and hash out anything that may arise.
Yeah, no problem. I'll speak to the chairman.
All right, thank you. All right, so it looks like we've reviewed the rankings, we've reviewed and acted on the report and recommendations. I think we had a very good and spirited general discussion. Does anyone have anything else?
No, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to hit on a couple more, I guess, items. Just to let you know, I'll defer at the time being if there was something further you'd like to say, or if any of the other committee members had anything to share.
John, if you've got a list, if I can just hit something real quick. Chris, we've been through this number of times, and so have you, John, in the past. I'd like to take the subjectivity out of the whole process of filling out. We have a brand new scorecard, and I think we're all comfortable with it. If the request could fall in line with the scorecard in a better way, so that they're answering the questions along the scorecard, and that everyone's doing the same form, I'd find it to be immensely useful and easier to score, even if we didn't have the live meetings in the case of an emergency. I just think the form, we got to update the formats for the capital requests in general. We've got the questionnaire. That I think the form should be more in line with the questionnaire. Just that's all I had.
I agree with
the
that.
Words out of my mouth.
Oh, sorry then.
No, through the chair, it's essentially I was going to share that I feel it's going to be effective if we work on next revising that the actual requests are more in line with our forms, and as you said, Tony, to eliminate the subjectivity there. That we on some of the information we've received, it's maybe we weren't really provided with a definitive lifetime of the proposed project, or some of the other information that we used as a ranking basis was kind of left a little open-ended.
Agreed.
Sure. I think maybe after elections and town meeting and everything, maybe we can convene sometime in June and maybe discuss it.
Yeah, I'm agreeable to that.
Okay.
Another point I'd just like to raise is that I guess it appears to me that, and I don't see this as a problem, but I think it's a good thing that it seems in particular that this year we're seeing more capital requests that aren't necessarily funded from free cash, and so that I with the making best use of time and with the appropriate ranking situation, my kind of feeling at this point would be to conduct our ranking process and filling out the sheets for the items that are just to be funded from free cash, and that the other proposals that are put in front of us, other requests rather, if they're not, wherever they may be funded from, and particularly looking at like water retained earnings, sewer retained earnings, that I think it'd be appropriate for the committee to, I guess, essentially just give those items an upvote or a downvote. That I think the use of the ranking sheet is kind of lost on those items just because the funding source is not free cash. I think that there's some pointlessness to ranking those items, and that it should just kind of be a general board consensus of yes, we agree that it would be appropriate to fund this project, or no, we disagree. What are the committee's thoughts?
Through the chair, I agree 100%. I think just having, like, say, I think we may not prioritize appropriately if we're including items that are not funded through free cash. And I think we're doing due diligence for at least still having them present to the board. But I'm worried about the thumbs up or thumbs down, but it's not in the scorecard, and it's not in the prioritization that gets moved on, or the letter. So I agree with you, John, in for most of your recommendation, 99% of it.
So Tom, through those water retained earnings, their request, we just have to consider it, correct? They just have to present them in front of us. Is that what I'm reading? That they don't need to be ranked according to our...
Yeah, so that's right, Mr. Chairman. If you look at the bylaw, if I recall, doesn't give any specific instructions to the committee on ranking the projects. It obviously doesn't mean that ranking them isn't a good thing. It's the way that at some point in the past, that's how this committee got established. Or I should say that's how this committee kind of settled on how to consider the projects. But it has to be, the importance here, the bare minimum is that the capital projects at least have to be brought before the committee. Yeah, any project valued over $10,000 and has a useful life of, I think, 5 years, I think. It has to be demonstrated that the committee actually considered it. And so how do you demonstrate that? You could look at the minutes. You could look at the report. I think a well-documented report should be able to sum it all up. That becomes obviously a public record, and then it shows all the work of the committee. And if the committee, I think, wanted to just do a yes or no vote, or up or down vote, let's say, on the water sewer projects, well, then the report, the narrative of the report would just simply state that.
And that, through the chair, that was exactly my intent.
I would just say though, it would be, I think, prudent to at least on the 5-year plan show the specific water and sewer requests. Okay, so that we can say, yes, this water main replacement on wherever, Clark Terrace, came before the committee in this year. I would still recommend that the specific projects be listed
Yes.
but that the committee
Agreed.
didn't, but that the committee didn't apply the same ranking methodology that it did for the free cash funded requests. And that's a simple, just short paragraph in the narrative to explain that. That's all.
No,
I, go ahead.
I'm fine that way moving forward. If that's what the committee wants.
I'm good with that.
So that would be then, just so just to be clear, so that would be not this round, but for the fall, starting in the fall, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Yes,
okay.
sir.
Okay.
Anything else, John?
Well, I guess in the interest of being thorough, I'd I guess just ask the open-ended question of, in this particular situation, all of the items that weren't funded from free cash, if any of the committee feel that it isn't appropriate or is appropriate to fund any of those items. And that, in fairness, that doesn't need an answer. I'm just asking the question for the sake of asking it.
I mean, it's pleasure of the committee, but I'm looking at the things that weren't funded. Looks like the patrol boat wasn't funded. The parking lot paving, the transfer station, the new cruiser special use, sidewalk plow, powder mill parking upgrade, O'Gara grandstand, and obviously the police building expansion. Everything else was pretty much funded through that.
Right, and through the chair, I don't have any reservations, with not funding any of those items. We hashed this out. I was, for just for discussion's sake, like, does anybody feel that it isn't appropriate that funding be put in place to get the trailer jetter, just as a hypothetical, or does anyone, is all the information appropriately provided for the Moose Hill tank ladder replacement? I'm just throwing the thoughts out while we're here, just so I can say that we took a stab at it. If anybody had anything, if they wanted the opportunity to bring it up.
Through the chair, I don't have a problem with it. Like I said, this is my first go around, so I'm just getting my feet wet. It would be helpful. It would have been helpful in the beginning to know that retained earnings, these guys can do what they want with their money pretty much, but it still comes before the committee, which I understand. I think it's kind of a waste of time, considering that they can do what that they need to do the things that they need to do for the infrastructure of the town. But I understand this is the process that the town goes through.
Through the chair, I have no issue with the review process that went through and decisions that we made to this point either. So I'm good.
Yeah, I'm good. And I know that those things that we didn't fund, they'll be back around come fall. along with new capital requests.
Through the chair, so a perfect example here, now that I'm looking at it, is let's take the map plotter and the printer for ODIS. You know, those are both proposed to be funded out of the ODIS budget, and they were originally proposed as being, necessary due to the e-permitting implementation. We now know that the e-permitting is not going to happen. What's our take on those two items? To answer the question, personally, I feel that there's absolutely still a need for those two items, and it's appropriate that they be funded in the ODIS budget. I guess that this is the kind of circumstance that I just wanted to call attention to, if nothing else, and I guess let the committee feel as if we appropriately weighed in on it.
So my thing on the printer was we heard that he needed to make plans, and there was copies that he needed to be done, and it's very time consuming for him to make them if they were in there. So I figured it was a need anyways, whether or not we have the e-permitting. Same thing with the map plotter. That it was essential to save time down there in the department. And a lot of the times when plans come in on a project, there's only one copy. They need 6 or 7. And this will speed that up, and we can actually charge them without them going back to where they got the plans and do it then. So I understood all that, but I don't know if anyone else did.
I would just, Mr. Chairman, I would also support what's being said. Those two items, there's a demonstrated need for those two items, regardless of whether the full e-permitting platform gets stood up at a later time here in town. It was pretty clear from what I read and during the course of the discussion with Todd on this, that these two items are much in need.
Any further discussion from any member of the committee?
Yeah, what's for dinner? I'm hungry.
All right, so hearing nothing, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
I have a motion by Bob. Do I have a second? Seconded by John. All those in favor by roll call. Tony.
Aye.
John.
Aye.
Bob.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Thank you,
Thank you, guys. Have a good night.
Have a good night, guys.
Thank you.
This conference is no longer being recorded.